There is a reflex in newborn humans that has no obvious modern explanation. When you hold an infant's body weight from below, supporting the chest, the baby goes almost completely silent and stops moving. Pediatricians call it the transport response. It was identified in lab conditions in 2013. But hunter-gatherer mothers have been triggering it continuously for at least 300,000 years. The question isn't how they discovered it. The question is what else they knew that we've quietly forgotten. Let's establish the stakes first. Because without understanding what a crying infant actually meant in the Paleolithic, the solutions don't make sense. A hunter-gatherer band moving through predator territory wasn't a large group. Estimates from skeletal evidence and ethnographic studies of contemporary traditional societies suggest bands of roughly 20 to 50 people. No walls. No doors. No barrier between the group and whatever was moving in the dark beyond the firelight. Leopards, hyenas, and lions all hunt partly by sound. A crying infant at the wrong moment wasn't just a problem for the mother. It was a threat to everyone within earshot. The pressure to solve this problem wasn't a social nicety. It was a survival calculation. The transport response is where the evidence gets interesting. In 2013, researchers at Riken Institute in Japan published a study showing that when a mammalian infant, human or mouse, is lifted and carried by a moving caregiver, the infant's heart rate drops, its limbs relax, and crying stops within seconds. This isn't learned behavior. It's a hardwired neurological reflex, triggered by a specific combination of being held against a warm body and the rhythmic motion of walking. The researchers called it the calming response to maternal carrying. The mechanism runs through the parasympathetic nervous system, the same system that controls rest and digestion. The infant body is built to interpret being carried as a signal that the danger has passed, that an adult has taken control of the situation, and that the appropriate response is to be still and quiet. Evolution didn't build this response for modern strollers. It built it for a moving human body navigating terrain where noise could get both of them killed. The left side bias compounds this further. Across cultures, across continents, across time periods, roughly 70 to 85% of mothers, including left-handed mothers, hold their infants on the left side of their body. The leading hypothesis, supported by neuroimaging research, is that holding the infant on the left positions its face closer to the mother's heart. The auditory and tactile rhythm of a heartbeat at close proximity has measurable calming effects on infant cortisol levels. Stress hormone output drops. Crying suppresses. This preference appears in ancient sculptures and carvings from Egypt, Greece, and Mesopotamia, in Madonna and child imagery across centuries of European art, and in ethnographic records of traditional societies on every inhabited continent. It is not a cultural convention. It is a biological one old enough to be embedded in stone before anyone understood why it worked. Nursing sits alongside carrying as the most powerful suppression tool in the ancient toolkit, and not purely for nutritional reasons. Breast milk contains tryptophan, a precursor to serotonin and melatonin, both of which have sedating effects on the infant nervous system. The act of suckling itself triggers the release of cholecystokinin in the infant gut, a hormone that produces satiation and drowsiness within minutes. Extended, on-demand nursing, the standard practice in virtually every pre-industrial society ever studied, kept infants in a state of mild biological drowsiness across most of their waking hours. The infant wasn't always asleep. But it wasn't in the high-alert, full-volume crying state either. It was biochemically managed, using a delivery system that required no preparation, no fire, and made no noise of its own. But the plant world adds a layer to this that most accounts of prehistoric parenting leave out entirely. Ethnobotanical research across traditional societies on every inhabited continent has documented the consistent use of plant preparations to soothe, sedate, and calm infants. Chamomile, passionflower, lemon balm, fennel, and wild lettuce across European and Mediterranean traditions. Specific species of valerian and kava preparations in Pacific Island communities. Various artemisia and soporific plant preparations in Central Asian and indigenous American contexts. These plants contain bioactive compounds with documented sedating or anxiolytic effects on mammalian nervous systems. They weren't invented by a herbalist in a medieval pharmacy. The knowledge of which plants did what to an infant's nervous system accumulated across generations of observation, trial, and transmission through the same informal channels that carried every other piece of women's practical medical knowledge through prehistory. Somebody noticed something. They told somebody else. The knowledge survived. The group behavioral dimension is the piece that gets discussed least. Individual mothers did not manage this alone. Hunter-gatherer bands show consistent ethnographic patterns of alloparenting, where multiple adults share infant care responsibility across the group. This distributes the physical burden, but it also distributes the knowledge. A younger mother benefits from the accumulated toolkit of every experienced woman in the band. Carrying technique, nursing schedule, plant preparations, the specific motion and pressure point that triggers the transport response, none of this had to be rediscovered by each generation from scratch. It was transmitted continuously, practically, within the group. The grandmother who knew which plant to steep for a colicky infant at midnight was not a peripheral figure in hunter-gatherer survival. She was load-bearing infrastructure. And then there is the dark end of the evidence, which the archaeological record doesn't let us avoid entirely. Infanticide in cases of infants with severe disabilities or in situations of genuine resource crisis is documented across the ethnographic record of traditional societies in a way that is uncomfortable but consistent. Ancient medical authors documented it. Legal codes from ancient Rome and Greece addressed it. Archaeological evidence for it appears in the skeletal record across multiple cultures. This isn't presented here to sensationalize it. It's presented because the full picture of how hunter-gatherer groups managed the survival problem of infant noise includes the recognition that in genuine extremis, when no other solution was available and the stakes were the survival of the group versus the survival of one infant, some groups made a calculation that modern parenting culture has the extraordinary luxury of never having to consider. The toolkit existed because the stakes were real. And the stakes were real in a way that most of us will never experience. Here's what the full picture looks like. The transport response hardwired into your infant's nervous system by 300,000 years of selection pressure. The left side holding bias encoded in stone carvings before anyone understood heart rate variability. The biochemical sedation system built into breast milk itself. The plant knowledge accumulated across generations and transmitted informally between women. The alloparenting structure that distributed both the burden and the knowledge across the group. None of this was invented by a pediatrician. None of it appeared in a parenting book. It was field-tested across hundreds of thousands of years of actual predator pressure and transmitted forward by every woman who got it right. That reflex you trigger when you pick up a crying baby and start walking. The way the crying stops almost immediately when you hold the weight against your chest and move. You didn't read that in a manual. You didn't learn it in a class. You just did it, the same way every human who came before you did it, in the dark, near predators, long before anyone had a name for what they were doing or understood why it worked. The modern parenting industry generates billions of dollars annually selling solutions to a problem that ancient humans solved with their bodies, their knowledge networks, and the plants growing around them. White noise machines replicate the ambient sound environment of constant movement. Swaddling replicates the pressure and restriction of close carrying. Baby carriers sold at a premium in every Western market are a direct commercial reproduction of something that hunter-gatherer mothers improvised from animal hide and plant fiber for hundreds of thousands of years before anyone thought to put a price on it. The technology changed. The underlying biology it's responding to did not. When a white noise machine works, it works for the same reason the savannah worked. When a carrier settles a screaming infant in 60 seconds, it works because the transport response is still there, waiting to be triggered, exactly as it was 500,000 years ago. You just paid $150 for the privilege of accidentally rediscovering something your ancestors knew for free.